Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first topical video on my channel in over 2 years, maybe even closer to 3 years, I'm not sure. I don't have a particular name for this episode or this series, or even if it's going to be a series, but I just really, because we aren't reviewing Raw for the rest of 2015, of the calendar year, we might do one at the end of the year, but I still kind of doubt that. I just kind of have some thoughts that I really wanted to get out there. John, I know John's here with me, so John, if you want to.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Me alongside my cohort and commentary, Ashton here, coming at you with our first topical video. Should be very interesting topics we're discussing today. But Ashton, you may have the floor.
Yeah, I really just wanted to talk about the WWE and their inability and, in my opinion, unwillingness to create not even just but any new truly top stars. And when I say top stars, I'm not talking about like your Chris Jerichos and your Edges. I'm talking about Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold, The Rock, Brock Lesnar, and John Cena, in that order.
Yeah, I mean, those megastars. You know, it's funny that you bring up those names, Ashton, because I recently came across a column written by everybody's favorite wrestling personality, Vince Russo. I don't know if you saw it, but he talked about what the real definition of over is, because he says he sees a lot that the definition of over that he sees is, oh, this really big reaction from a crowd, or this, that, or the other. We kind of use that definition a lot. And he
Over is
says,
somebody that people are willing to pay money to see win.
and you know, like what he said was, I think he kind of had that definition, but he said was, you know that a guy is legitimately over because their absence hurts the overall product. Like their absence isn't something that can be easily recovered from. And you think about, you know, if a John Cena got hurt for an extended period of time, you know, you have to wonder how would WWE handle that?
Well,
How
I
would
mean,
they
I think that in
approach
that
that?
case, then John Cena's not even over, because John Cena's missed Raw before. He's missed periods. He's missed months of Raw before, over the course of the last year or two, even when he was out with the elbow, and it didn't really hurt the product that much.
Right, right. So, you know, I think, you know, you just look at those really big guys, like you said, they will pay money to see that seem to be an integral part of the product.
Right.
And it seems to be monopolized by, you know, just a few guys when you could really have like a plethora of really like eye catching, you know, take my money kind of guys. So it'll be interesting to have a discussion today.
To me, it's as far as actually being over goes. If you're a babyface, it's somebody that people are willing to pay to see win. If you're a heel, it's somebody that people are willing to pay to see lose.
Right.
That's as simple as it is. Being over is simply the ability of a performer to extract money from people to see what they want to see.
Yeah, seems straightforward enough to me, and that'll be the definition that we work with throughout this
Right.
discourse.
But
So
I'm not even talking about getting someone over. That's the thing. It's the WWE. If the WWE wanted to get somebody over and truly over to the point that people are willing to pay money to see the person win, or in the heel's case lose, but we're mostly talking about baby faces in this, so let's just stick to that. They could. It's not difficult. They've done it with so many people in the past, and if they really wanted to do it, if they really wanted to set their minds to it, they could. They just There are two big points that I want to address here. First of all, I don't think the WWE wants to make new stars right now. And second of all, even if they did, I think that they're struggling to find a way to connect to the audience enough to actually know how to do so in recent years.
I would certainly agree with the second point, and I don't have contention with the first. I'm just curious why you believe like they don't want to create new stars right now. Why do you think that is? What's the source of this problem?
I think it traces back to really the beginning of the WWF, specifically the beginning of the WrestleMania era back in the 80s. 85, I believe, was WrestleMania 1. Hulk Hogan was the guy. There was no question about that. Hulk Hogan was the number one guy, and the closest that Vince McMahon ever came to intentionally unseating Hulk Hogan as the number one guy in the company was Ultimate Warrior, right?
Right.
Okay, I will give anybody that wants to argue that point that the Ultimate Warrior is a great example. But I think he is the exception rather than the rule. Because other than him, you can look at the entire rest of the history of this company, and they refuse to make anybody their new top guy until their hand is forced. Hulk Hogan left, and that was when you saw the rise of Bret Hart. Bret Hart went to WCW, and that was when you saw the rise of Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels lost his smile, and then Stone Cold came out. Stone Cold, whether it was injury or just taking his ball and going home, that was when you saw The Rock, and then the second time, Brock Lesnar really emerged. Brock Lesnar leaves for the NFL, suddenly John Cena takes over, and John Cena hasn't decided to leave or be injured in the most major way, where he's out for over a year, since really his entire career. I was going to say since he started, but yeah, his entire career. And because of that, because John Cena hasn't forced Vince to make any new stars, he's chosen not to.
And I certainly agree with that point. I love that you kind of constructed a timeline, through the generations that, I mean, not only has there been a precedent established, I mean, this is just a commonplace practice anymore.
Right.
But what I find so interesting, like you go to the 80s, now you know that this really wasn't my area, so I'm going to ask everybody's forgiveness ahead of time because I'm going into waters that I'm not too familiar with. But, you had Hogan, but you also had like these other really colorful personality. You mentioned Ultimate Warrior. A lot of people gravitated to him. Macho Man Randy Savage, Jake Roberts, people like that.
Well, Jake Roberts is pretty much always a heel, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like even though he was a heel, like he had that charisma about him.
And we have that today
that
too. We have that today too, but they aren't top guys.
And I think that's the problem, because I think in the 80s, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, like you could have Hogan be the man, but you could also have like other top important guys, because I know Macho Man Randy Savage, he main evented Manias, he won the world title. Same thing with Warrior. But it seems like the concentration, at that level is with John Cena. Now, I've given him all the praise in the world for this mid-card run with the U.S. title, but look at the stars that you could have created that could have been more compelling figures, not just in the title picture, because the title picture is one aspect of a main event. You can be in the main event that doesn't even involve the world championship.
John, I think you're skipping ahead a little bit.
Okay.
Because you're getting ready to like start listing off names of guys that WWE dropped the ball in, and I'm not ready to get there yet.
Okay, all right, I'll rein it in.
We will definitely get to that, and there's one big name that I want to talk about, but we're not there yet, I don't think.
Absolutely. So where do you want this conversation to go from here?
Well, I'm actually glad that you're bringing up all of the colorful personalities and all of the sort of semi, not quite, but almost top guys from the 80s. Like you have your Snookas, your Steamboats, your Savages, and we don't really have any guys that are quite on that level anymore today. And I think I'd like to think, at least, that I know why. And I think that it really does come down to The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Brock Lesnar all leaving within like a year and a half of each other. I think that right there, those three guys, I would argue two of which were still in their prime, that being The Rock and Brock, because Austin was getting a little bit older, and even though he still had a few years left, it's not super surprising that he left given the neck issues. I think that right there, that event, those three guys leaving as close together as they did, despite two of them still being in their prime and one of them still having a few good years left, basically scarred Vince. I think that caused Vince to not trust anyone. And I think that also happening right around the time that WWE became a publicly traded company. I think it was just 2 or 3 years after that, after WWE became publicly traded, that those guys left. All that stuff happening together, and Vince's mindset changed because he stopped trying to make stars, and he started to try and make the brand the star rather than the individuals working for him.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Ashton, because I was even getting ready to broach the subject of Brock Lesnar, just his sudden departure, because you have Brock Lesnar come in, and I want to focus on him specifically, because with The Rock, to me, I feel like he already did his time in the Attitude Era, this and that, and we already mentioned Stone Cold with the health issues. Brock, to me, was always a sticking point, because he was in the company for 2 years, was a phenom in the industry, with the people that he beat, the manner in which he beat them, and, the world title runs, and just his look and everything else.
Is it safe to say, John, that Brock Lesnar was the fastest rising star from debut to the top of the company ever?
Oh, Ashton, I'd say absolutely. Now, granted, you know me, I don't have as much wrestling experience like watching the product as, say, you do or some of our other contemporaries here, because I was Ruthless Aggression era to present. But I can tell you from my personal experience, there was never anybody like Brock Lesnar. I mean, you want to talk about a meteoric rise? I even think about Kurt Angle's rise, and I feel like he got slowed down a bit more than even Brock
Yeah.
Lesnar. You
And
know?
even John Cena had a slower rise than Brock.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Brock to me, he came in, and when you have Paul Heyman alongside you, and you're a part of the storylines that you were a part of. I mean, you're talking about a man that got to work with The Rock, Hulk Hogan, The
Undertaker.
Undertaker.
Yeah.
Like success was going to be
I mean,
guaranteed to you.
he's basically the reason Austin left, because Vince wanted him to beat Austin clean on a random episode of Raw with no build up, no advertising, no nothing like that, and Austin wasn't having it.
Which, to this day, I completely side with Stone Cold. Could he have handled it better? Sure, he could have. But, I think they were so obsessed with making Brock Lesnar just this new face of WWE. And I hate using that term because I know that gets passed around so much in
No,
storylines
you're
anymore.
right though,
But
John, and I
yeah,
think that the fact that they smashed him over as hard as they did, and then he just kind of decided on a whim that he didn't want to do it anymore, I think that's exactly what caused Vince not to trust people anymore. He, at that point, you could tell there were 4 guys that were there then that he put all of his trust into. Can we name them off, John? It was John Cena, Batista, Randy Orton, and Edge. And the only guys left are Cena and Orton, and he can't trust Orton with a world title run or to be a main event star, to be a top guy because of the wellness policy issues. So it all rests on Cena's shoulders.
yeah, and when you really frame it that way, I almost feel like John Cena's the victim of this story rather than the villain.
Oh, I'm not denying that
You
John
know,
Cena's in an extremely unfortunate position. He
right.
has all of Vince McMahon's trust if he wants to do anything else. I heard a rumor that he wanted to be in some kind of like a reality series, not Total Divas, but something actually revolving around him and his endeavors. I've heard that he wants to do a sitcom. I've heard that he wants to do more movies, and it all basically he has to run this stuff through WWE and get it approved so that he can do it. And it's just one of those things where this is a guy who has spent his last 15 years wrestling, might be thinking about moving on and might not even be able to because he's been so reliable that it's gotten to the point that they're relying on him to be reliable.
Exactly. I mean, I remember the one quote you told me in a random conversation. I think this was over a year ago, maybe longer back, but it was at one of the conference calls, and Vince said, "Oh, John Cena's pulling in 100 million in revenue. He feeds us."
Yeah.
So I think that soundbite, and then Ashton, it really makes me think like the entity of pro wrestling, the venue of pro wrestling. I think more than any other job, it's so contingent on all the clashing human natures being in accordance with each other. Like, oh, you're with me on this, are we on the same page? Because with Brock Lesnar, he wasn't on the same page with everybody towards the end. I read this huge chunk. I don't know if it came from a book or where somebody found it, but he was talking about frustrations with travel. He hated the traveling conditions. He didn't like certain booking conditions. I remember there was a live event, I want to say in Miami, just to put a place out there. He was supposed to lose to The Rock, but he was the WWE champion at the time. And he said, well, the Rock's beating me, why am I the champion? I feel like when you're the champion, you're supposed to be the best. So Brock had all of this frustration mounting, and I feel like if you're Cena, bringing the focus back on him, he's been doing this for so long. His body has sustained some serious injuries, but not to the point where it's been debilitating to his life or his career. I wouldn't blame him if he woke up one morning and he said, you know what? I'm still healthy enough. I could pursue other options. Let me pursue those options. And, that's why you can't bank on the nature of a person that you're investing so much in to just never change, because that's not going to happen. And
Right.
I think Vince is in a real bind here.
I think that the issue with Vince's mindset, where he's going to make one guy, or I guess in that specific case, 4 guys, whatever you want to call it, the person, like the man in this case, and just kind of keep everyone else in the mid card, maybe upper mid card. The issue then is what happens when that guy, or in this case again, those 4 guys, either aren't around anymore or decide to leave.
Yeah.
I think that Vince is better off using the old lottery ticket logic, where sure, if you buy a lottery ticket, you could win, but the more you buy, the more chances you have to win. The more stars you create, the less you have to worry about any one of them leaving, because then you have more to back it up.
Exactly. I mean, WWE has the potential to create stars in quantity, and I would dare say if they really put forth the effort in their writing to create stars in quality. Just because you create like 5 stars doesn't mean, 3 of them have to be lackluster or whatever. You can create, 5 out of 5 legitimately compelling stars, in my view.
Yeah.
I think they have the capability. I think the problem is, again, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier in the video. I think that's the focal point of this con, if you want my honest opinion. It's Vince McMahon. Vince needs to get over himself, and I'm not saying in an egoistic sense. I'm saying he needs to get over the scars of the past.
Right.
He needs to get over that Brock Lesnar, who he has back now, by the way, and they seem to have a great business agreement the way it sounds. So,
I guess he wasn't too scarred.
not too scarred, but I think still he keeps in the back of his mind, well, never again. I can't put so much in one guy that I know, that they leave and then I'm left, pretty much empty-handed. And you look at everything that he's getting out of Cena, the merch, all the PR, and again getting the brand over rather than the superstar over, which we already kind of talked about our frustrations with that when you see certain campaigns and you see certain heels be part of those campaigns and just everything else. It really leaves a problem, I think, because you think, well, when Cena's gone, who is the next guy going to be? And, is that going to be the only guy? Because there's so much potential in the locker room, but Vince is so tentative to really bring those guys up to that level because he's thinking, no, what if they cash out on their popularity and they go do something else? It's really tragic.
And that's kind of my thing right now that I really wanted to kind of bring up. Remember, I said that there were 2 things. The second one that I said was about how they, even if they wanted to try, they're struggling to actually connect with the audience. But the first thing is, I don't think they want to make new stars. And I think that Vince's kind of mental scarring from Lesnar and Rock and Austin all leaving so close to each other is part of that. But I also think they want the brand, the WWE name, to be what people are tuning in every Monday night for, rather than any specific individual, which to a degree it can work if the brand is exceptionally entertaining, but in recent times I think we've seen that that's not necessarily the case. So a lot of the time you really do have to rely on people tuning in to see certain people rather than just being like, oh, WWE's on, let's watch it. And in this case, I think that the reason that they are okay with just having a bunch of sort of mid to upper mid carders, and I think Meltzer has even come out and said that the style of booking that WWE has been using for the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe decade, has caused us to have basically a generation of mid carders. And I think that the biggest reason that they do that is so that everyone is interchangeable, because to me, the biggest issue that the WWE has faced this year specifically has been injuries. Daniel Bryan's the biggest one. WrestleMania 30 might as well have been WrestleMania Daniel Bryan. He gets injured. He's out for a few months. He comes back for maybe 3 months, and then he gets injured again. Now, obviously, knowing the WWE, they're probably going to never put a major title on Bryan again based on the fact that they've given him the injury-prone label. And even though I don't necessarily agree with that, I can understand why they would do it. That being said, though, they should already have turned guys like Dolph Ziggler, like Ryback, like Cesaro, like Dean Ambrose, like Roman Reigns into big enough stars that they don't need to worry about Daniel Bryan not being reliable, being injury prone, whatever they want to call him, because they have enough star power to back it up and not have to worry about losing that one asset.
I want to go through your points one by one, but the first thing I really wanted to say, because you said something that kind of made my ears prick up. You said that WWE, and we've been kind of saying it throughout the commentary, they're more about getting the brand over than any particular performer over.
Save for John Cena.
Save for John Cena. And you know what? While you were saying that, I'm like, you know what? Because I was really racking my brain. I'm thinking, am I absolutely sure that if I say this, it's correct? And I really do believe it. I feel like Lucha Underground's achieved that, and they don't even really make it as much of a conscious effort as WWE does. Because in WWE...
That's why I even said, if you want to make your brand the star rather than any individuals, it needs to be exceptional. And in WWE's case, you can't say that. In Lucha Underground's case, I think it is exceptional, which is why it works so well for them.
Exactly, because like when we look at Lucha Underground every week when we tune in, I mean, sure, I'm a Johnny Mundo guy, and I'm always going to be looking forward when he's on the show. But
Johnny Mundo got you to watch. The brand got you to stay.
exactly, and that's the perfect way to say it. And then you look at WWE, and you talked about the whole Daniel Bryan situation. I mean, that was tragic, and this is nothing against Bryan because I enjoy the performer. Yes, I've had my criticisms of the Yes Movement as a whole, but really the big issue is you put all your eggs in the basket of this one man and just how fervently over he is. Like I actually it's funny because I think like last week or 2 weeks ago, I went back and I watched the clip of Daniel Bryan suckering Bray Wyatt in the
Yep.
steel cage. Like that moment was electric. I'd still say that was one of the best Raw moments of that year. And when he got injured though, it's like all the momentum died. And then you have people, they soured on Roman Reigns, when it was his rise and his time to get the championship, which was funny because, the year that Bryan wasn't in the Rumble, people were rooting for Reigns to eliminate Batista. But then when Reigns really does get his turn at bat, where people say, okay, it really is his time, they don't want it anymore. And, I feel like it's just, and then they didn't go with it. They went with Seth Rollins. And
You know
now
why
Roman is
though,
kind of brought
John?
back up.
I think I really wanted to just talk about that because that actually is an argument that I've seen people use before, and it actually really annoys me. I think when people come up with that argument, when they say, "Oh, people wanted Reigns to win, and then they had him win, and people didn't like it," things changed. It wasn't just a matter of people wanted Roman Reigns to win, so they liked him, and then he won, and then after he won, people stopped liking him. It didn't work that way. He went on one of the worst booked, I would say, 8 to 10 months or so, I think I've ever seen with anybody that the WWE actually wanted to get over. Because people wanted to see him win at the Royal Rumble, and that was great. And he was great, I would say, until he got injured, maybe even. The injury in, I think it was August or September last year, I wouldn't necessarily say that the injury was the problem, but the way that he was treated after the injury was a problem. Because then once he got injured, they had him talk, I think it was on every pay-per-view, just a via satellite promo after the injury up until his return at TLC that year. And the problem there is that it's not organic. You're not letting you're not letting people miss him because you're showing him every single month on a pay-per-view. And then he comes back, and the first thing that he says is that he's going to be in the Royal Rumble, and in that promo, he flubs a line. And then the whole build up to the Royal Rumble, he does this whole sort of Looney Tunes shtick where he's talking about Jack and the Beanstalk, and he's calling Seth Rollins a suffering succotash something or other, and the whole thing was just horribly written. They tried to get Reigns over in all the wrong ways, and by the time the Royal Rumble hit, the fans had already turned on him. The Royal Rumble wasn't, oh, we loved Roman Reigns going into it, and then he wins it, and they turn on him. The fans didn't like him before the Royal Rumble happened.
Oh no, I completely agree with you, and I feel like again that's no fault of Roman Reigns. That does come back to the booking because I feel like Roman Reigns is at his best when he's that like near silent badass. Maybe says a few lines, but then just takes care of business.
I think
That's
Roman
why,
Reigns has been at his best since WrestleMania, and including WrestleMania.
yeah, I mean he's done tremendous work. I think because they, no pun intended, but they reined in, the corny
They
promos
reeled back
and
on it.
yeah, exactly. And they just let him go back to being that badass that, I fell in love with when he was in the Shield.
Right.
I gave Roman Reigns some of the biggest pops I could muster when he was on his old, build within the Shield. I enjoyed what he did just this past Monday on Raw, where he said, you know what? Send the bigums to the back and let you and I settle this. Let's fight. And, I love that Roman Reigns because, let's knuckle up and let's take care of business. But WWE, and I don't know if you want to get into the second topic yet because it seems really appropriate with Reigns that they just don't seem to have their finger on the pulse of what the audience wants.
Right.
And I feel like Roman Reigns is a prime example of that. Why would you have a guy as legitimate as he is, as badass as he is, when you saw what he did in the Shield and what he was starting to do on his own, say things like suffering succotash. Like To me, if I didn't know any better saying it out loud, Ashton, you'd think it was an act of self-sabotage. Like, let's just screw over this gimmick, because I don't even see how that connects. So, I mean, what do you think about WWE's whole nature of just not having their finger on the pulse of what, is going on in the world, or just really what the audience wants in general?
Yeah, but before we get to that, I think that now is a good time for us to start name dropping some guys that they could have made a star if they wanted to, but they chose not to.
Well, I mean, the name that comes to my mind first and foremost is Cesaro.
Yeah.
Uh,
Cesaro had massive momentum coming out of WrestleMania 30. He won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. We know it lovingly as the Arm Bar because Andre the Giant's last name started with an R, and we just, AR Memorial Battle, BA for Battle Royal Arm Bar. It's easier to say. But yeah, Cesaro had huge momentum coming out of that. And he ditched Zeb and joined Paul Heyman, and people loved that. But then they had Paul Heyman come out and just try and heal it up. And I'm not even like the fact that he was talking about Brock Lesnar the whole time kind of felt cuckish. But on that same note, I feel like that was just his way of trying to get heel heat. And the problem there is that he shouldn't have been trying to get heel heat because Cesaro shouldn't have been a heel. He should have been a babyface.
Oh my God, yeah. Like and I remember I reacted. I thought like, oh man, this is gonna be amazing, Cesaro and Heyman, because I thought that it would inevitably lead to Cesaro Lesnar.
Yeah,
That
and
was
that
kind
was
of
my
my
thought
mindset.
too. I was calling for Cesaro Lesnar to main event WrestleMania 31 as soon as WrestleMania 30 was over.
Exactly, and obviously, if you're hearing this, you know that that didn't happen. And it's really a shame because I agree with you. The pop he got at WrestleMania 30 when he threw Big Show over the top rope like Hogan did Andre with that body slam was insanity. And him leaving the Real Americans, which even though granted towards the end of this whole run, a lot of people were saying we the people, and they didn't really seem to be like really big heels. It was still a cool moment. And then you have Paul Heyman make it all about how Brock Lesnar conquered the streak, which again, I
Well,
wouldn't
and
have
don't
even
forget,
minded.
John, don't forget earlier on in the night at WrestleMania 30, he had already turned on Swagger.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he had turned face and then went on to win the armbar as a face. And then the following night, ditching Zeb was the kind of the last face move. And then he aligns himself with Heyman, and the crowd reacted like that was a face move. So I was getting even more excited. But then, as it turns out, the whole plan was for him to double down on the heel tendencies to try and get booed.
Which makes no sense to me because logic would have said, and I was waiting for this. I was waiting and waiting and waiting because every time Paul Heyman would brag about Brock Lesnar, beating the Undertaker streak, I was waiting for Cesaro to show irritation, to
Yeah.
show annoyance, all building up to the point where he rips the microphone out of Heyman's hands and more or less says, "Shut up." And it just leads this big descent, and then again Cesaro Lesnar, and it just goes to show like they heard the crowd reaction, they heard everything else, and then obviously because they haven't forgiven Vince for it since, he says on Stone Cold's podcast, well, I feel like he just doesn't have it. He needs to work on that charisma. And like fans still haven't forgiven Vince for that because they knew how over he was after WrestleMania 30 and
Right.
they botched it. But enough about Cesaro because I feel like we've talked about him 1,000 times. What's one name you would put out there
To
that
me, and to me, this is the biggest flop that the WWE has done, and it really was a matter of self-destruction, just they did it to themselves. They knew they were what they were doing. They did it on purpose, and it was the dumbest thing that I've seen them do in a long time. Ryback,
yeah.
you go back to towards the tail end of his babyface run when he was going into SummerSlam, or maybe it wasn't even SummerSlam, maybe it was Night of Champions to face CM Punk. The match where Brad Maddox was the referee, and he stopped Ryback from doing anything to Punk, and Punk ended up getting he did, I think, like a German suplex off the middle rope onto Ryback, and they both had
Uh,
their shoulders pinned to the ground, and it was a double 3 count.
let me wait. Let me just stop you there because you're getting your events mixed up. That double pin was against John Cena at Night of Champions. The whole Ryback controversy was at Hell in a Cell when Brad Maddox low blowed him and CM Punk just schoolboyed him and he
That's
got
right.
the win.
Thank you. Yes. That the whole run for Ryback leading up to that Ryback was getting the biggest reactions on the entire roster. The entire crowd was behind him. Feed me more chants night in and night out, constantly. The dude was on the brink of becoming a legit rock star. And then he lost to CM Punk, and then he turned heel. And the heel turn was the final nail in the coffin, and he hasn't recovered from it. I mean, he's gotten kind of sort of close now with the IC title, and, you know, he's still getting the Feed Me More chance, but it just isn't on the same level at all.
You know, Ashton, it's so funny how our views change and kind of how we mature in a way as commentators when we look at certain things. Because, you know, back then, when we were doing Twitwell at the time, I was really behind Punk and this and that. But even I said that I felt like I wanted Ryback to win at Hell
Dude,
in a
I
Cell.
feel like that was even the year that Chris Jericho came right out and said, Ryback can be the next big thing. If you really want to smash him over, have him beat Punk for the title, have him retain against The Rock at Rumble, and then have him retain against Cena at Mania, and you have a made man.
Yeah, and I completely agree with Chris Jericho. I got so much flack for it because it was
You
only a
even
little
made a
while ago.
video on that, dude!
I did. Like, I really came in support of Ryback, but a lot of people had a problem with me because before that I made a video like really celebrating Punk's reign and wanting it to go to distance. But I was seeing how over Ryback was getting, and why I bring this all up is I'm saying now today when I reflect on it, I would double down on that position because I realize now just how illusory great reigns are. And here's the thing. I would have had Ryback do everything that Chris Jericho suggested, but even if you didn't want to do that, Ryback's reign didn't have to be that long. I think he could have actually generated a lot of sympathy if he beat Punk, but then he got screwed out of the championship like in his first defense or something, and then he would have to chase it again.
Yeah.
But the idea that, you keep it on Punk, but you don't even keep it on Punk through his own ingenuity. No, it's a Brad Maddox low blow. And then you have Ryback, he shell shocks Punk on the top of the cell and all that stuff, but then he gets screwed out of it again by the Shield.
And
that
then who
TLC
did he
match on Raw.
face at WrestleMania that year, John? Do you remember?
Mark Henry.
And Mark Henry beat him.
Yeah.
And then he shell-shocked Mark Henry after the match was over.
Like, the mismanagement of Ryback.
And then the following night on Raw, he turned on Cena. And everyone was excited because everyone thought, okay, now they're just going to make Ryback a killer badass that doesn't care who he goes after. And he's going to be a tweener. And he's going to be like Stone Cold Steve Austin, where he just comes out and kills people every week. But no, the week after, he was talking about, cutting promos, talking about how people don't understand nutrition. Are you kidding me?
And that made no sense because when he attacked Cena, like, I popped for it, and it was even cooler because he led the Feed Me More chance to close the freaking show.
Yep.
So you lead the Feed Me More chance, and then the next week you're like, none of you understand me. I thought John Cena was my friend. Like, what? What are you doing?
Seth Rollins, what?
Exactly. It just absolutely absurd to me when you look at all the missteps they took with Ryback. And I know he was so unpopular in so many IWC circles at the time.
You know what, though, John? That's my thing, too. I understand that a lot of people in the IWC hated Ryback at the time, but to me, you aren't booking to appeal to the IWC. You're booking to appeal to the casual fan. And not only that, but you're booking to appeal to the non-fan so that you can bring more people in to create fans.
Exactly. And I feel like Ryback was the champion of the casual fan. The pops he got. I remember I had a conversation with my friend James, who is a bona fide Ryback mark even now. And he showed me the clips of when Ryback came to save Ric Flair, or he came to defend Vince McMahon because he had his whole little scrap with Punk. The pops were huge.
Yep.
I mean, like absolutely gargantuan. And to think that he would become heel, lose to Cena, and then just pretty much be nowhere. I mean, yeah, he did Ryback's when that was fun, but Ryback has never achieved the same level of fanfare that he had at the time when he was just running through everybody and kind of slowly ascending.
Dude,
and
do you remember the segment where Punk had Vince McMahon up into a GTS position up in the fireman's carry and Ryback's music hit? That reaction from the crowd?
Reaction was insanity. The roof blew off the place, and it makes me wonder, Ashton. I mean, we're talking about all these missteps, of this particular star. Does it go back to the John Cena dependency? Because if John Cena was not hurt, he would have taken that spot, and I wonder what they would
Yep.
have done with Ryback at the pay-per-view had
Yep.
John Cena not gotten hurt. Now, I'm not blaming John Cena; injuries happen, but had he
No,
not
we're
got
not
hurt,
blaming John Cena. We're blaming the WWE for not realizing that they had lightning in a bottle and taking advantage of it.
exactly,
They see
because
lightning in the bottle and they want to just break the bottle up against the wall.
Exactly. Because, I mean, Punk's reign ultimately came to an end at the hands of The Rock, and then The Rock drops it to John Cena. So who does it really help? I mean, I get it. Rock brings eyes to the product, this, that, and the other, but I've
You could
always.
have created somebody who would have brought eyes to the product that are actually full time.
Exactly, Ashton. It's short-term gain versus long-term gain,
And
and
that's another
WWE
problem
yeah,
too. The dependency on part-time legends. The Rock is an example. The Dudley Boys are an example. Mark Henry was just on Raw. Kane is getting a main event program. The Big Show is facing Brock Lesnar at the Madison Square Garden house show that they're showing on the network. The overdependence on part-time old timers is a massive problem. And it's not a problem because I have a problem with old people wrestling. I don't. It's a problem because if the WWE didn't use them, they wouldn't be getting numbers, and the numbers being low would give them the kick in the butt that they need to actually create a new star. So they're using this dependency on old timers, on part time, attitude era stars to basically cushion their numbers so that they can keep on telling themselves that their product is just fine.
exactly. And it's such a shame because when you look beyond the part-timers and the older guys, again, we have such a talented roster. I mean, you look at a guy that I still feel like could be a mega babyface potentially in Neville. And the reaction he got with both of his bouts against Seth Rollins
And the
as
one
WWE
against
champion,
Cena.
and the one against Cena. You know, I, I just feel like, again, we said like the second part was WWE not having their finger on the pulse, and I think that's both, with how they handle certain gimmicks. Everybody knows my gripes about the handling of the Solomon Crow character, and just in
I
general,
think
like who people
Roman
want to see.
Reigns is the ultimate example of the WWE not having their finger on the pulse because you talk about a guy that everyone already knew. WWE wants this guy to be their next star. And if you ask me, I still think that he will end up being the next big star. It just might not be for another year or three, 2 or 3.
Right.
But they clearly wanted him to be that guy, and he's got the ability to be that guy. And they proceeded to say, Roman, go out there and read these lines. And the lines that he was given were absolute garbage.
See, and this is why, even though it seems like a separate issue, I'm going to try and bring it all back. I almost wish that people had the confidence, or maybe stroke would be a better term, had the stroke of, like, say, a Shawn Michaels or a Stone Cold to put their foot down and say, no, these lines suck. It's gonna kill me. I don't want to do it. But I feel like, and I read this a lot. I've read a lot through the years how there's a great sense of trepidation in the locker room, because you almost feel like if you go against Vince or you go against whoever is really building whatever they're building for you, that it's a death sentence. But Roman Reigns, I can't believe that Roman Reigns, the performer, and the person looking out for his character, looking out for what's making him money, was looking at these lines and thinking, "Oh yeah, that'll work." I can't believe that. And it's just such a shame where we have an environment where I think it's not just WWE's inability to create new stars. They don't even create an environment where the stars could kind of take the power in their own hands and make it happen for themselves.
Yeah.
It's really a shame. I mean, look at and as much as I make fun of the guy, but look at Zack Ryder. Like, he had a grassroots movement, got him to the U.S. Championship. Reign didn't last that long, and I think his downturn really began because I heard he didn't want to give WWE creative control over the YouTube channel. Now, a lot of people give Zack Ryder flack for that. That's kind of a debate. Was he in the right? Was he in the wrong? But the fact is, he crossed a line and he didn't come back from it. So no wonder there's trepidation in the locker room when you hear stories like that. It's just crazy to me. I think it's just an environment that really isn't meant to be breeding new stars, but it's meant to be treating the old guard, with the top card spots, with the championships, while everybody else is just kind of waiting with their hands outstretched for their turn.
I think the
It's a shame.
Dudley Boys are a perfect example of this because you have the pretty much the hottest act in the WWE right now is the New Day. So what do? Rather than building up another hot act in the tag team division, even if you have to make it from scratch, even if you just want to say, Jack Swagger, Wade Barrett, you guys are a team now. We're going to start building you up. Sure, people would reject it at first, but you build them up a little bit. You let them show off their in-ring moves a little bit. They get some cool tag team stuff going on, maybe a fun tag team finisher, and suddenly people are thinking, oh, wow, I really like this team. I want to see them against the champions who just so happen to be the New Day right now. And suddenly you have an organic feud that actually makes sense, that makes everyone look better, that builds more than one guy or one team at a time.
Yeah. First of all, I completely agree. Second of all, and I'm sorry to be doing this, but you just got something stuck in my head. Where is Barrett? I feel like it's
That's
been
another
forever
one.
since we've seen him.
Dude, that's another one. Another perfect example of the WWE refusing to allow stars to be made organically. The bad news Barrett gimmick with the podium was golden. He was a heel who was being douchey and saying negative things and getting cheered because of how charismatic he is. And what did they do? They took everything that made him beloved by the fans away.
Yeah. And first they tried to do a whole BNZ, whatever, kind of thing, a whole TMZ kind of spin-off thing. And then they just did King of the Ring. And now I can't even remember seeing Barrett for weeks. Maybe I'm missing something, but it feels like a while since we've even seen Barrett, period. So you go from being this really hot act that probably could have wielded the Money in the Bank briefcase and just gone to the top, finally staked your flag in the freaking moon. And now we're not even seeing you. And now to bring it back to the central point, because I just had to get that off my chest, I apologize about the tag team division. How many times do I got to say, and how many times do you got to join me in saying it? You have such a great tag team in the Lucha Dragons, and
Doing
they're not
nothing.
doing crap. Like, it's so funny because one of the complaints that you'll hear a lot, not so much anymore, admittedly. I think they've gotten tired of using that argument. But, WWE is for kids. WWE is for families. Well, I'd say if you're the Lucha Dragons, you're thinking good. Good, because what kid wouldn't want to wear our masks? What kid wouldn't want to wear our t-shirts? And what parent wouldn't want to take the opportunity to spoil their kid with our masks and our t-shirts? They have done squat with them. And that's why when I think about, and I'm not saying they're true. But when I read reports about Carlito saying, oh, I may come back, and WWE's interested because they want a top Hispanic star. He's 36. Kalisto's 28. Kalisto does things that'll blow your freaking mind, and he has that likability. And I'm just thinking, if you do this with Carlito, because I was even thinking about it last night, I'm thinking he may return answering the call of a U.S. Open challenge because him and Cena have that history. I guarantee you that's how he'll return. Guarantee you. But you have Kalisto twiddling his thumbs. Now, he's doing something with Neville and Sin Cara, and better he do something than not be on TV at all. I will concede that point. But you were talking about somebody that I would love to hear his music hit for a Cena U.S. Open challenge and just have him and Cena go 15 minutes. Show people what he can do and then get the masks out and watch them sell like hockey. It's not that hard. But you go to the Dudleys. Now, I got no problem with the Dudleys. Again, I revealed some backstage stuff about Bubba. Devon's always been the consummate professional, apparently. But as an act, I like the guys. I do. But I'm seriously supposed to care about your 10th WWE Tag Team title when you're so beyond established it's ridiculous, while the Lucha Dragons are just fledgling to stay relevant when it shouldn't even be that hard. They should be waking up relevant. The act is so hot. I don't get it, man. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, and to me, even if you don't want to go full on, let's push the Lucha Dragons, you could break them up and just push Kalisto as a singles star, and you could probably count the number of people that would complain about that on one hand.
And dude, and I say this with all due respect to the fans because I get it, because I love this division as a kid, so it has my sympathy. But people are all like, oh, they need to bring back a cruiserweight division for all these guys. No, they don't.
No,
With
they
what
really don't.
with what John Cena's doing right now, you have Kalisto's music hit, and you have those two go 15, 20 minutes, really make it almost an exhibition style match for Kalisto, and of course John Cena wins in the end. I guarantee you, people are going to be asking, what's Kalisto going to do next? And you've instantly made him relevant. You have Kalisto, hell, if you don't want to do John Cena, maybe have him and Seth Rollins have an altercation backstage. Seth Rollins belittles him, then Kalisto issues a challenge, then he takes Seth Rollins to the limit. That's why I love the booking of Neville early on, because he took Seth Rollins to the distance, and then people were automatically invested in him. It really isn't that hard to generate intrigue in a performer. You've just got to get off your asses and do it. It's
You know
really
what the
not that
difference,
hard.
though, between Kalisto and Neville is?
What's that?
Kalisto's just as impressive as Neville in the ring, but Kalisto has a mask that's marketable, so immediately we're talking, marketability is something that he has over Neville. Plus, he can speak two different languages, including perfect English with no accent.
I know. Like, you just made up all the points. Because, I mean, look, folks, as much as we all may hate the word, we've got to acknowledge that WWE at the end of the day is a business. The object of a business is to make money. And you just gave all these attributes of Kalisto. Why is nothing happening with him right now? And in the children's demographic, with the whole parents and everything, it boggles the mind. And that, again, is not having your finger on the pulse. You've been looking forever now for this top Hispanic star because you realize the gold mine you had with Rey Mysterio, and I sympathize with your plight. I do, and I'd be more sympathetic if the answer wasn't staring you in the face.
Exactly.
Like, that's what it comes down to. If the answer wasn't staring you in the face, I'd be like, you know what, guys, that is rough. I wish you did have somebody to capitalize on that market with. And maybe I could even forgive Carlito because, hey, desperate times, desperate measures. But these aren't desperate times for this particular problem. The answer is right there. You've just got to reach out and take it. So, finger on the pulse, they're nowhere even near the pulse to begin with to put their finger on it. Like, it is so bad.
And if they're looking for a main event level star, first of all, I think Kalisto can be that. But second of all, if they're looking for a bigger guy and a main event level star, Carlito's not the answer for that either.
No.
I mean,
No.
Carlito's got decent size, but it's not like he's like, Alberto Del Rio was 6'5", 230 something. So, Carlito is definitely not the right guy, no matter what they need. If they just feel like they need that guy, kind of like what Mysterio was, where he appeals to the Hispanic demographic, he sells merch, he puts on good matches with just about everyone. Kalisto's staring him right in the face. If they want a guy to replace Del Rio, where it's like that main event level guy, I don't think that there is an answer right now.
I don't think there's an answer either.
Unless they decide to bring in La Sombra from CMLL, who just got unmasked.
Right. You were telling me about that.
I think he's 6'2" or 6'3". I'll have to look that up then.
And we're in such an interesting time, Ashton, because when you look at NXT is on fire right now. And NXT, I feel like for all the grievances we have with the main roster, NXT really hasn't suffered those grievances. I mean, we even talk about the part-timers. To me, Rhino hasn't been shoved down our throat, and what he's doing, I at least find it interesting, because he's teaming with Corbin, and they're in the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic as one of the more dominant
We're not talking
teams.
about NXT, though. We're talking about the main roster.
And I get that, but I'm bringing up NXT because I think about the fact you have so many great acts, Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, this and that. But we go back to the central issue, WWE not having their finger on the pulse. You get a guy like Finn Balor who's going to come up eventually, who's going to be, I think he wakes up with dollar signs all over him. Are they going to capitalize on that? Like, that's my central question, because we're talking about how they don't have their finger on the pulse now. Is that really going to change in the future?
No.
Because, and that's just it. I worry. In fact, worry doesn't even cover it. I'm petrified for guys like Finn Balor, Sami Zayn, Samoa Joe, Hideo Itami, because they may have
there was
success.
just a Meltzer line the other day where he said that they're going to screw up with Sami Zayn because he looks like Sami Zayn.
Exactly. They'll have success in the short term. They'll get cool moments and everything. It won't take long, though, before I think they're just caught in that limbo like everybody else. And that's a problem. You can't have Cena or whoever the champion is at the time, or Brock Lesnar or whatever, kind of monopolize that sphere of like all the media, all like the really big storylines. You've got to create something substantive for those guys that are ready to take that spot as well. The Roman Reigns is the Dean Ambrose. I mean, Dean Ambrose, I don't even really know what we do with him anymore. I felt like he was getting great babyface reactions with the whole feud with Seth Rollins, but then it just kind of fizzled out again. And now we're here again. And I'm just like,
Yet another example of the ball being dropped, though. Let's go back to Hell in a Cell 2014. Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins main evented this show. And how did it end? Bray Wyatt. And then they sent Ambrose off on the Wyatt feud, and it completely killed all of Ambrose's momentum, like I said it would that frickin' night.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you said before anybody, because I even tried to keep my mind open to the feud, saying, oh, this could be good for both guys, but it really wasn't. I would even say it wasn't even that good for Bray, and he won the damn thing. Like it really didn't do anything for either guy. And Dean Ambrose was one really hot babyface act, chasing Seth Rollins and doing that. He never really got his comeuppance. Bray Wyatt, my God, Bray Wyatt, I feel like is such a magnificent act. But and I do feel like he's getting interesting again because I love Wyatt Family 2.0.
Can I just point out that I think that one of the biggest problems that the WWE's creative team has is that they have so many guys as faces or heels that would be more natural the opposite.
Yeah.
Because to me, both Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose would be better as heels than they are faces. And if you're not going to give Reigns the push to the moon like everyone kind of thought you were, why would you not make him a heel? I've said this so many times before, I'm going to say it again. Every top babyface in WWE history, the only exception, and this isn't even necessarily a true exception, it's just I don't know anything else, is Hulk Hogan, started as heels. You have, okay, let's just go in order. Bret Hart was a heel. Shawn Michaels was a heel. Steve Austin was a heel. The Rock was way better as a heel than he was as a face. John Cena was a heel. Brock Lesnar was a heel. CM Punk was a heel. Daniel Bryan got over as a heel, for God's sakes. People don't remember that, but don't forget late 2011, early 2012, when he was the douchebag abusive boyfriend to AJ Lee, that run was the most entertaining stuff he's probably ever done, save for maybe the Team Hell No stuff, and he was a heel. You need that run. I've been saying this about Roman Reigns since before the Shield even broke up. He needs a heel run to really solidify himself as a performer.
Yeah, and I agreed with you then. I agree with you now. Certainly, I think another problem for me, because I was still kind of stuck on Bray Wyatt while you were going through your stuff with Roman Reigns. I think another problem with certain gimmicks, I'm not saying all gimmicks, but it's overexposure.
Yes.
I look at Bray Wyatt. This kind of character has a natural mystique to it. But what happens, Ashton, when a mystique or something that's mysterious, more and more of itself becomes revealed? Well, it becomes less interesting as a consequence.
We should be seeing Bray Wyatt every other Raw and on pay-per-views, and that's it. He shouldn't be on Main Event or Superstars. He shouldn't even be on SmackDown, and he shouldn't even be on every episode of Raw. He should be on 2 or 3 episodes of Raw a month, plus pay-per-views. Sure, let him work house shows if you must, just to kind of make it seem like he's really earning that paycheck. But at the end of the day, he needs to have a certain level of mystique to him. It needs to be a bigger deal when he does cut a promo, and he's been doing it so frequently for so long, it just doesn't matter anymore.
It really doesn't. Hell, I was in complete agreement, and this is me speaking with the utmost sincerity. I'm not trying to bust any balls here. With the Big Show, when he said he felt like he was being overexposed. Yep. You have this guy who's 7 foot tall, has a great look, even at this point in his career, is a part-timer.
Is still obviously capable of cutting a solid promo, because I really enjoyed his promo on Raw this week.
I did as well. So why aren't you making him that heel that comes in occasionally just to kind of remind everybody I can impose my will, and then you have the babyface stand up?
I'm a giant!
I'm a giant! Like, I love that. Ashton, I've been very vocal about my criticisms of the booking of Sting. Now, to be fair, we had one commenter say that Sting feels okay with his booking. Well, that's fair enough. If he's okay with it, my opinion is moot, clearly. But, I don't back away from it. I still think it's a mishandling. I feel like overexposure, whether you're a legend, a part-timer, a new guy with a gimmick that may be hurt by overexposure, it's a legitimate problem. And again, like, I think WWE has to be able to discern with gimmicks, okay, this is a gimmick that could get away being seen on the regular, and this is a gimmick where less is more. And they haven't made that discernment, and they're all just kind of thrown together, and I think it just causes like a lukewarm reaction. I still hear Bray Wyatt getting what chance? I feel like that wouldn't happen if they pulled it back a bit and he did these promos less often, because I think people are just tired of his promo style. The same guy that generated 2 Forbes articles because he was such a compelling character and they hadn't seen a character like him in such a long time is now getting whatted in the crowd. Way to go, WWE. You really handled that
another
project
big
great.
thing that we need to kind of address that the WWE's main roster does not do, and that actually plays into this idea of overexposure, that NXT and Lucha Underground both do, is the roster rotation. Now, I understand. First of all, 3 hours is tough to fill every week. I totally get that. I empathize with that. I get it. I honestly feel bad for the writers, but I don't feel bad for the WWE because going to 3 hours has given them so much more revenue. 50% more, to be exact, revenue than they had when they were 2 hours. But when you have a roster as deep as you have on the WWE, and you still have guys like Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens and John Cena and Randy Orton and Big Show and Sheamus and the Wyatt family and the New Day and probably Cesaro even. And I'm listing guys, and Dolph Ziggler and Dean Ambrose. I'm listing people that are on Raw every single week.
Yeah.
Now my question becomes, when was the last time you saw Fandango on Raw? How about Heath Slater? How about Jack Swagger? How about Wade Barrett? How about, I don't know. Let's talk about Macho Mandow. When was the last time you saw Damian Sandow on Raw?
I can't even remember at this point. It's been so long.
So the fact that you've got this core group of guys that are on Raw every single week, and then this other core group of guys that we can't even think of the last time we saw on Raw, you'd think that there'd be a really easy, natural way to balance that out.
Yeah. And like, it's so funny, Ashton, because you're saying all this, and it just makes me, go back to the time when 3 hours was announced. And I tried to remain optimistic about it because I'm thinking, oh, guys, that's a whole extra hour for them to build more substantive storylines for the mid-card.
Yep.
They didn't do jack.
Nope.
And, like, that was the problem, because I, too, sympathize, Ashton. I get it. 3 hours of content, it's tiring for the viewer. It's got to be doubly tiring for the writer because, they're producing the damn thing. And you just think, well, what do I do? But you have got these guys. Heath Slater had an interesting tweet like a few days ago saying, like, I wish I didn't work as hard as I did, or this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't know if he's serious or what, but this could be an interesting character arc. Let's explore this a little bit. Nothing.
And not to mention, John, that was me just listing men. Let's talk about all the women that haven't been on TV in months. I mean, Natalya was just on Raw for the first time in months.
Yeah.
And she lost.
Which was, that's great.
Alicia Fox is on Raw seemingly every week in the background. I'd love to see an Alicia Fox match every couple weeks.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, though. You have this massive roster. I don't even want to try and count the number of people on the roster because it's too big. You've got tag teams. You've got women. You've got talking segments. There is so much that they could do, to the point that 3 hours wouldn't even seem like enough. And they would have to do some of the stuff that they wanted to do on Raw on SmackDown, because if they would actually try and use the entire roster rather than just the 30 or so % of it that they're currently using every week, they would not know what to do with themselves.
They wouldn't, and it's really a shame.
I think that's what's another thing that's wonderful about Lucha Underground. Do you think, John, let me ask you this. Do you think that Lucha Underground has more or less than 1/3 the roster that WWE has?
I think they have less. Certainly I think they'd have less.
You think that Lucha Underground has less than 1/3 of the roster that the WWE has?
Yeah, their roster isn't that big, but they make it
what
work.
If I would say 1/5?
Okay, I'd say they'd have more than 1/5, trying to work that number on my head.
You would say they have more than 1/5 of the roster that the WWE has. So just say, I'm just going to toss something out there, obviously completely arbitrary. Say the WWE has a 100-person roster and Lucha Underground has a 20-person roster. That's exactly 1/5, right?
Yeah.
Does Lucha Underground have a very specific 8 people that they have on every single one of their shows?
No.
Because that's basically what WWE's doing.
Yeah, and you know what, Ashton? It's funny because when we do those parallels, another thing I was getting ready to say again, not having your finger on the pulse. Now, granted, I'm gonna ease up a little bit because of this past Raw. They did experiment with some new stuff, but my God, is the product formulaic? Like
Yeah.
virtually every week. Now, again, gonna ease up a little bit on this Raw because we had a brawling segment to start the show, but
Well,
every
and you
other
know
week,
what though, John? It's that brawling segment to me that even if you had that brawling segment just one time, it opens the door for the Authority to open up next week. And then the following
yeah,
week, change it up. And maybe do 2 weeks in a row without the Authority. And then the Authority opens up the following week, and people are like, oh, hey, look, this used to be a normal thing, but now it's not.
exactly. Exactly. You gotta break the monotony. And I feel like,
And
they don't have any awareness about that.
just to kind of come back to the Lucha Underground comparison, you
Yeah.
look at the Lucha Underground roster from top, we'll say that because he's the champion now, all the way at the tippy top, Mil Muertes, all the way to the bottom. Let's just throw out a name, maybe Famous B, maybe Vinny Massaro, maybe one of the guys that Pentagon Jr. broke their arm, right?
Right.
They're in storylines now because of that.
Right.
And if you want to go just a notch higher than that, you could say maybe like an Arhennis or a Ricky Mandel. Those guys are currently part of Trios champions.
Exactly.
You can go from the top of the Lucha Underground roster to the bottom, and everyone has something going on. If you look at the bottom of the WWE roster, and I'm not even talking about the bottom 5%, I'm talking about the bottom 50% of the WWE roster. I already named some guys. What is Fandango doing right now? Nothing. Heath Slater, nothing. Jack Swagger, nothing. Wade Barrett, nothing. It's ridiculous. Samian Sandown, nothing. Mark Henry just had a match, but it didn't mean anything, and now he's probably going to go away for another few months. So nothing. R-Truth,
Yeah.
nothing. I love that you said that at the same time as me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's just ridiculous how. And now they just got a freaking tag team championship run, and now they're doing nothing again because of the Dudley Boys. PTP.
Did they ever get left out in the cold? Like, it's
And I know you
crazy.
hate him, John, but even Zack Ryder is a talented in-ring worker. The crowd likes him. He's doing nothing right now.
Exactly, and he should be. Look,
Adam
as
Rose has a brand new gimmick. He's doing nothing.
well, Ashton, I mean, another thing, too. And what did you and I say? The debut of, this new darker Bo Dallas leads to Jack Squad because he got demolished by Ryback on Monday. Now,
Yep.
I don't necessarily mind that because I know Ryback's in the program with Owens and he's got to regain that momentum. But you had Bo Dallas be interesting. The guy was traumatized after his beatdown from Lesnar, had a new disposition on life in his whole Bo leaving movement. I thought, okay, this is intriguing stuff. You have him beat down R-Truth, say he's going to do it to more people. Well, I would have loved to have seen it if it actually happened. And see, that's another thing I hate. I don't know if maybe this ties into everything else we've been saying, but it seems like WWE has a real start and stop mentality. You just said PTP. They put the belts on PTP.
You know, it's funny because for the longest time I've called it the push-pull mentality because you push a guy and you push a guy and you make them look good, but then they get a little too hot and then you got to pull back on them.
Yeah, that's an even better term for it than start and stop like I was using. But yeah, the whole push-pull mentality. You got PTP, you put the belts on them, and you know what? I can't even blame PTP for their reign being lukewarm because you had them behind the announce desk the whole time doing commentary.
And they were doing commentary while there was a significantly more entertaining thing going on in the ring.
It was either commentary or the bulk of it 6-person matches. They do realize that there's more than just scouting your opponent and wrestling matches, right? You could do promos with your babyface team and your opposition.
That was what got them over enough to win the titles in the first place, was cutting promos on everyone in the division.
Oh my god.
And then they got over, and then they got the titles, and then they got reeled back in.
Exactly. I can't even blame PTP, and that's why anymore when we're talking about certain guys, I always try to be careful to allocate the blame appropriately between the performer and the people behind the curtain, because I feel like PTP was another team that was sabotaged. They know who they are. They're secure in their identity, and they know what gets them over. Titus O'Neil gets a hot tag. He is over. Okay? I don't care how you feel about Titus O'Neil. The guy is one of the most over hot tags in the tag team division. And they're not even cutting promos, which, like you said, Ashton, is what brought them to the dance in the first place.
Yep.
Like, how do you not call that sabotaging the reign? It's just ridiculous to me. Again, not having the finger on the pulse. It's not taking stock of what's going on in your own product. How can you observe PTP getting these great reactions from these promos, put the belts on them, and then come to the logical conclusion, you know what? We're not going to do that anymore. Excuse me? Like, how does that work? So, yeah, man, I wish somebody actually would watch the product, because it seems like most people that really should be aren't, and it's frustrating.
Yep. Oh, yeah, there's a lot to talk about, and I'm glad that we're doing this now because, I mean, you want to just talk about, we already talked about the roster rotation or lack thereof. Let's just kind of touch on the women because we might as well, right?
Yeah.
Well, sure, Charlotte's your new champion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now what? Now we're going to get Charlotte versus Nikki Bella versus Paige at Hell in a Cell, right?
Yeah, that seems to be the direction.
Okay. Is it just me, or over the course of the last, I would say 2 months, since the whole Divas Revolution thing started, Alicia Fox, Brie Bella, Naomi, and Tamina pushed to the wayside. They're involved, but they don't really do jack squat.
Yeah.
Toss Natalya in there.
Yeah.
You've got 5 women on the main roster right now that I would say Natalya, Alicia Fox, and to a degree Naomi are at least competent in ring workers. Tamina can do decent power stuff. Brie Bella, whatever. She's a good jobber. I'll give her that. But still, you've got these women, and even Becky Lynch, I would say, has been overlooked for the most part because it seems like for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks even, the only people that have been doing any kind of in-ring work have been Sasha, Paige, Charlotte, and Nikki.
I feel like all the criticisms that Paige levied in her promo, kayfabe or not, it pretty much hit it on the nose for me.
You know what I really want to see, John?
What's that?
And they teased it a little bit. I want to see Alicia Fox and Becky Lynch get into a feud. They teased it. Alicia Fox talking about how, oh, and you're the crazy one. And then Becky Lynch was like, oh, yeah, what are you going to do? Pour some soda on me? And we had like that little teaser in that Miz TV segment. And the segment itself was awful, but that came out of it. And they never followed up on it. I want that match.
I just want feuds, man. I want promos. I want interactions.
To me, they don't even need to necessarily be feuds. I mean, sure, is being able to pull off multiple feuds in the women's division like they do in NXT would be great, but you don't even have to do that. Just feature people that aren't in the title picture every week. I think this week was a good start because we had Naomi and Natalya, but you had Naomi go over. Why? Because she's part of the quote-unquote Divas Revolution, even though Natalya winning would be way more revolutionary than Naomi.
Yeah, I mean, dude, here's the thing. It's so funny because you and I have been saying for a while anyway that the Divas Revolution is a farce. And to me, you've just put a fresh coat of paint on the persistent problem. This division is dominated by a core group of people. Does that sound familiar from the rest of this commentary?
And you know what, though, John? I'm going to toss another name out there that we haven't talked enough about that's caught up in a pretty awful storyline that deserves a lot better. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, lay it on me.
Summer Rae.
Oh, God, yeah.
Summer Rae might be, behind Sasha Banks, the best heel diva on the main roster right now.
I would agree with that. Sure.
And she is in the middle of a feud that revolves around boyfriends and relationships rather than actually wanting to be the Divas champion.
I mean, am I the only one? And here's the thing. I'm not saying those types of storylines can't work. I mean, I think Edge and Matt Hardy was stupendous. Chris Jericho was stupendous. But really, like, this, first of all, this
they were
storyline
fighting
isn't
over
working.
A woman, though.
And that's just it. And now these women are fighting over a man. So I'm saying relationship-based storylines can work. I feel like this one isn't working.
Right.
And really, honestly, I feel like it's kind of archaic a little bit in 2015. I don't know, especially when you do have women involved who are more than just, oh, what boyfriend am I going to get to fill this emotional void? Like, women are so much more than that. They have far more dimension, they're far more complex, and you're reducing them to man fighting. Like,
I think that you could
you know,
pull off kind of like the Chris Jericho feud with Rusev and Ziggler fighting over Summer because Summer can't make up her mind.
right.
I could see that working out, but at the end of the day, I just want more for Summer Rae.
Yeah, and I do too, because I feel like even the stuff she was doing, and
Why is it that being in a relationship means that you can't also be an in-ring competitor in the WWE?
yes. Why does your
Why can we
okay,
not
but yeah,
have one of those classic Paige versus Summer Rae matches that we used to get, seems like monthly in NXT?
yeah, Summer is so much more to bring to the table, and I think with what she's been given, she does her best, and she does a damn good job. Again, I really try and give Summer credit when I can, because I know I haven't looked upon this storyline favorably, and I am a part of the majority in that view. But Summer does a quality job, with her role. But she can also be a solid in-ring performer. Why wouldn't you want to pursue the Divas Championship when you have Rusev by your side?
Yeah.
I would. And that's the thing. We talk about the relationship storylines of Christian, Jericho, and Trish. Trish still pursued the women's championship when all that was going on.
That's
Lita,
why
you know,
I brought that up, because of that fact. I remembered that.
yeah. Lita, hell, you want to talk about Lita pursuing it? She had Edge help her win one of her women's championship reigns at
That's
one
right.
point, because I think it was her versus, I want to say, Maria or somebody,
Yeah.
and Edge speared her.
I think you're
And
right with Maria too and everything.
yeah, Edge speared her. Lita capitalized. But I mean, and I get it, the whole man on woman violence thing, that could be problematic for WWE. So I'm
Well,
not saying
you
have
don't
Rusev
have to have
suplex,
Rusev super kick freaking Charlotte or anything.
but just get on the apron and distract her or something, or just be a part of it. Like there could be so much more in this power dynamic than what they're doing, and it's really a shame, because I really think it does make. I don't want to say it makes the women look bad, but in a way it kind of does, because they can do so much more.
Right. So that's
It's
just
yeah.
really, I mean, that's kind of summing up our complaints about the Divas division. Paige did a pretty decent job, but I think we have some complaints about her too, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not just everyone else. I think that Paige is, well, I mean, really the biggest complaint that I had about Paige prior to this week got solved this week, and that she's not a natural babyface.
Right.
She's a
So
much better heel, and she was able to turn heel, and she cut the best promo that we've seen in the Divas division since AJ Lee's pipe bombshell.
right, yeah.
So
I
there
would
you
agree
go.
with
So that's that problem hopefully solved. Uh, you know what, Sean? I think that I've about said my piece on this matter. I'm trying to think of what else we wanted to talk about, and I feel like we hit on pretty much every subject.
I feel the same way. I've got nothing more to say on this. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much all the frustrations I'm feeling. You kind of laid your cards on the table. I'm just hoping that WWE can turn the tide soon. I mean, not just for our sake, but for their own sake, given those ratings numbers.
Yeah, really, and that's another thing. We just found out that the ratings for Raw this week were the lowest that they've been in years.
Yeah, really
Which is,
bad,
it's
guys.
honestly, it's kind of a shame, because I thought that this week's episode of Raw was actually really good.
Yeah, and again, like I hope seeing those numbers, because I like that WWE did try and do some things differently, I guess. I mean, mainly the brawl, having Natalia back on TV, Paige's promo. They did some good stuff on this show. I hope they, keep trying to experiment, kind of tinkering with the structure a little bit and doing whatever. Personally, I know a third hour does great for their revenue. I wish they'd go back to two, personally, but they're going to keep three as long as they keep generating that revenue. So
Yep.
if you're going to keep playing with three, keep, altering the structure a little bit. Have more guys come on. I'd love to see Barrett. I'd love to see Truth. I'd love to, God, I can't believe I'm saying this. I'd love to see Slater and Ryder just do something. Like, when you reduce me to saying that, that I'm just looking for something other than the guys that we're seeing every week. So here's to hoping they can work it out.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Man, we said a lot here. Hopefully, some people pick up on what we said and fill us in on what you guys think. Do you agree with what we said? Do you think that the WWE is intentionally holding people back because they don't want anybody to get too big and end up pulling a rock and going to Hollywood and making a bigger name for themselves there? Do you think that the WWE tries to make stars and is just incapable because they don't know how to write well enough to do that? Do you think that it was a mistake to take all of the best aspects of some guys that were getting organically over as baby faces and taking them away because they were supposed to be heels? Looking at you, Fandango, Cesaro, and Bad News Barrett. Just let us know. Tell us what you think. And we're looking forward. I mean, John, I don't want to speak for you, but you usually say this, so I'm going to say it for myself. I'm looking forward to the comments.
I always look forward to the comments. I mean,
Absolutely.
every time. Talk to us, talk to us, talk to us. I said
that's
it
almost
times.
John's catchphrase at this
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to summon Beetlejuice over here, people. Leave some comments. Let's have this discussion because I feel like a lot of the frustrations we're venting, I know for a fact. Some of our friends, in Pweetov and just on YouTube share these sentiments. So let's get this conversation going. I'd like to pick your brains. I know Ashton would love to. You can do it here on our TwitWow subreddit. I mean, you have forums you can use. Your voice matters. Use it. I want to hear it. So here's to hoping that happens.
Absolutely. We will see you guys for our Lucha rewatch tomorrow. And until then, hopefully you enjoyed this. I know we did. I know I did personally. And let us know what you thought in the comments section. If you enjoyed our content today or any other time, leave us a like. Make sure to subscribe so that anytime we put out a new video that maybe wasn't necessarily planned, it comes straight to your YouTube subscription feed. And we will see you for Lucha Rewatch and NXT tomorrow night.